name is Joe Biden, and I will be running as a Democratic nominee for president in the 2020 election. Over the next couple of minutes, I will be talking about the presidential campaign that my team has produced to defeat Donald Trump in the fall, in November. Led by Justin Moe, Damon Peruso, and Corey Rue, over the next couple of minutes, we will talk about the issues that I will be tackling and talking about while in office and ultimately acting on. We'll be looking at my campaign strategy and looking at which states we will target in the election. And ultimately, we'll look at some of the political ads that we'll produce. Looking at our first issue, we're talking about gun control. This is one of the main issues that I feel that I have to correct, as this has been an issue completely botched by the Trump administration. When looking at gun control, since the Sandy Hook incident, which happened when I was back in office with Obama, I'm looking to take more control over gun control issues. I believe they should be off the streets in order to create a much safer community. So, how exactly will I get these guns off the streets? Well, first of all, I will ban the manufacturers and sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. I will look to hold gun manufacturers responsible. They can't be allowed to get away with the heinous crimes they've committed over the past 8 years. I will look to regulate possessions of existing assault weapons under the National Firearms Act. I will look to reduce stockpiling of weapons, buy back the assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, which are already in our communities. I will look to require a background check for all gun sales. Now, I'll repeat that again, because this is truly a point that I feel is going to be the number one key to getting weapons off the street and saving American lives. So, how exactly will I require a background check for all gun sales? I will close loopholes in the gun control system currently that the NRA so proudly promote. When I was vice president, with Obama, we had a policy which looked to keep the guns out of the hands of certain people unable to manage their affairs. The Trump administration has since reversed this policy, and clearly this has been a major mistake. People with mental health issues and people that have mental disabilities and cannot control guns should not be allowed to buy them, yet Trump believes this is a good idea. So, I would look to close the hate crime loophole, the Charleston loophole, and the fugitive from justice loophole, which have been created by the Trump administration. I will end the online sale of guns and ammunitions, create an effective program to ensure individuals who become prohibited from possessing firearms will relinquish their weapons. I will look to incentivize state extreme risk laws, give states incentives to set up gun licensing programs, and ultimately fund the background check system. This will ultimately be done, as said before, through state incentives. This will be my plan to tackle gun control in 2020 and beyond, and I believe it will be an effective one, because ultimately, my number one priority is saving American lives. The next issue we will be covering is immigration. The challenges that the world are currently facing and undergoing will not be solved by building a wall and separating families. These cages that Trump has locked these children into are absolutely horrific and disgusting, and I cannot believe that this has been allowed to be foreseen by Mitch McConnell and co in Congress. Trump's misguided policies will only further security problems. So, what will I do to tackle immigration? First of all, I will take urgent action to undo Trump's damage and reclaim America's values. I will modernize America's immigration system and welcome immigrants back into our communities. I will reassert America's commitment to asylum seekers and refugees and tackle the root causes of irregular migration. I will implement effective border screening and not build a wall that Mexico will pay for, when over 4 years we have seen that Mexico has not paid for anything. The Biden commitment to a fair and humane immigration system will be one that I will strongly advise for. I will take urgent action to undo Trump's damage and reclaim American values. I will immediately reverse the Trump administration's cruel and senseless policies that separate parents from their children at our border. This has been something that has been covered by the media over the past 4 years, and as we have seen, it is absolutely disgusting. This will be one of the first things I do within my 100 days. I will end Trump's demential asylum policies, surge humanitarian resources to the border, and foster public-private initiatives, and ultimately end prolonged detention and reinvest in a case management program. This is my outline for immigration in 2020 and beyond. The third issue that I will be tackling as President of the United States is climate change. Please keep in mind that these are in no particular order, but these are just the main issues that we will be focusing on. Climate change is something that has taken a threshold in our world over the past 4 years, something that Trump has actually done more to hurt than help. Trump pulling out of the Paris Accords is probably one of the worst actions he has committed in office, and there are a lot to choose from. I understand that there is no greater issue today than taking care of the world we live in today, and tomorrow, and the day after. I plan to install a clean energy revolution. I believe in a framework that will further the awareness of the climate changes and how we can better our habits. So, what will I do to ultimately make our climate a healthier place? I will make the public understand how important climate change is in this world, something Trump refuses to acknowledge every single day. Whether it's by activists, by Greta Thunberg, or others, Trump ignores this every single day he's in office and ultimately hurts the earth that we all live on. I will stand up to the abuse of power by polluters who disproportionately harm communities of color and low-income families. I will fulfill our obligation to workers and communities who powered our industrial revolution and subsequently decades of economic growth. I will ensure the U.S. achieves a 100% clean energy economy and reaches net zero emissions no later than 2050. The next issue I will be focusing on as president is bankruptcy. When it comes to bankruptcy, we have seen time and time again American families suffer from the consequences of our current system. However, Senator Sarah Warren's plan for bankruptcy is one I highly advocate for and something we will be following when I am elected president in the fall. In Sarah Warren's plan, it makes it easier for people being crushed by debt to attain relief through bankruptcy. As a Democrat, I think it is important for the government to be involved in our economics and to ultimately help people out when needed, not to have a laissez-faire approach taken by Trump and many other administrations. I will expand people's rights to take care of themselves and their children while they are in the bankruptcy process. I will end the absurd rules that make it nearly impossible to discharge student loan debt in bankruptcy. This is something that I truly believe is a terrible thing that has happened to our country, and our student loan debts have risen enormously, and the numbers are to prove it. I will let more people protect their homes and cars in bankruptcy so they can start a firm foundation when they start to pick up the pieces and rebuild their financial lives. No individual should have to deal with having their homes, cars, and basically livestock taken from them because they can't pay back unfair debt. I will rebuild this and make this right. I will help address the shameful racial and gender disparities that plague our bankruptcy system, and I will look to close the loopholes that allow the wealthy and corporate creditors to abuse the bankruptcy system at the expense of everyone else. Lastly, one of the main issues that I will be focusing on as president is the issue of health care, one that has been widely debated by many Americans in this country. Trump's repeal of the Affordable Care Act, implemented by the Obama-Biden administration, was something that I believe was a terrible thing to do. I plan to further the Affordable Care Act and then build on it, something that we were not able to do while we had our 8 years in office. I plan to build on it by giving Americans more choices, reducing healthcare costs, and ultimately making our healthcare systems less difficult to navigate through. I will, as president, give Americans a new choice and a public health insurance option like Medicare. I will increase the value of tax credits to lower premiums and extend coverage to more working Americans, the people who need it the most. I will expand coverage to low-income Americans. All Americans will have a new, more affordable option. Middle-class families will get a premium tax credit to help them pay for coverage. Premium tax credits will be calculated to help more families afford better coverage with lower deductibles. And I will ultimately, one that I definitely hate, stop surprise billing. In addition, I will look to tackle market concentration across our healthcare system, lower costs and improve health outcomes by partnering with the healthcare workforce, and repeal the outrageous exception allowing drug corporations to avoid negotiating with Medicare over drug prices. The Trump administration has time and time again allowed big corporations to get away with dreadful crimes. I will not let it happen with myself as president. I will look to limit launch prices for drugs that face no competition and are being abusively priced by manufacturers. Once again, this is another example of Trump letting the upper corporations get away. I will limit price increases for all brand, biotech, and abusively priced generic drugs to inflation. I will allow consumers to buy prescription drugs from other countries, terminate pharmaceutical corporations' tax break for advertising spending. It is absolutely ridiculous that pharmaceutical corporations, which rake in millions and millions of dollars every single year, have a tax break when it comes to ad spending. They have more than enough money, and they do not need to save money when our working Americans need it more than them. I will expand access to contraception and protect the constitutional right to an abortion, one that has recently been talked about very frequently in the past 2 years. I will reverse the Trump administration and states' all-out assault on women's right to choose. Women have the right to choose what happens to their bodies, not men. I will restore federal funding for Planned Parenthood, and I will reduce our unacceptably high maternal mortality rate, which especially impacts people of color. Next, we will be looking at my campaign strategy in order to defeat Donald Trump in 2020. While it's great, all of my ideas and all the things that I would look to implement, they won't matter much if I'm not president when 2021 and beyond. Therefore, this is my campaign strategy to defeat Donald Trump in November and ultimately become president of the United States. States that I will attack the most include Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and Florida. Besides some swing states, we will also be looking at states that Trump won in 2016 that ultimately he shouldn't have won overall. We hope to swing these states back to the Democratic side and ultimately help Biden become president. A timeline for my campaign includes Arizona in August, Ohio in September, Wisconsin in September, Iowa, New Hampshire, Minnesota in October, Michigan in October, and Pennsylvania in October. Ultimately, these will be the key states that we will be targeting, and we will also launch a nationwide campaign, which is soon to be announced. But we look to announce these states now, hopefully to have more supporters be excited that Joe Biden is coming to achieve America from the darkness they are in. Ultimately, as President of the United States, I will look to take America back from the destructive and dark reign that Donald Trump has imposed on Americans over the past 4 years. I will look to fix our economy and fix our healthcare problems that have been plaguing our country for years. I will look to fix our gun control issues and take our country on a new path to its economic and climate greatness. Ultimately, our Earth is something that needs to be protected because none of this will matter if we can't inhabit it. Together, as one, I hope that we all elect Joe Biden for president in 2020 and defeat Donald Trump in November. Thank you.